In the silent spaces between heartbeats, beneath the ordinary cadence of daily life, there exists a realm unnoticed by most, a lattice of reality both vivid and intangible, as though the world itself is a stage set for those willing to perceive beyond the script. The ancient text we are about to explore speaks to this very threshold, an artifact of enduring wisdom that does not merely instruct but awakens, beckoning the seeker to peer past the veil of the commonplace. To read it is to confront a mirror reflecting the subtle architecture of existence, a matrix of patterns, choices, and illusions woven into the fabric of consciousness. Here lies no metaphoric fiction, no playful musing. It is an invocation of clarity, a map for those ready to step out of habitual perception and into a direct encounter with the machinery of reality itself. This matrix, often described in hushed tones and speculative whispers, is more than circuitry or code. It is a living, breathing confluence of agreements, memories, and projections. It holds the energies of countless lives, their narratives crystallized into structures we rarely question, yet which govern the rhythm of every thought, every impulse. To inhabit this matrix without awareness is to move within a painted labyrinth, mistaking shadows for substance, patterns for purpose, and motion for meaning. The ancient text does not merely ask you to notice these walls. It teaches how to dissolve them from within, like mist under the rising sun. It instructs in the act of unlearning the habitual certainties imposed by perception, a practice that feels at once unsettling and liberating, because to leave the matrix is confront the boundless unknown that pulses beyond the familiar. Consider, for a moment, how a dream can seem utterly real until dawn. Within the dream, everything is coherent, bound by its own internal logic. You navigate streets that exist only in the mind, converse with figures who feel alive, and make choices that appear consequential. Yet upon awakening, the streets vanish, the faces fade, and the gravity of the choices dissolves. The matrix is no different, except its dream is persistent, layered with a sediment of years, expectations, and social constructs that seem permanent but are, in truth, remarkably fragile. The text before you, preserved through centuries of human contemplation, is a guide to awakening mid-dream, to realizing that the walls you perceive are not barriers but canvases awaiting conscious intention. What strikes the seeker most profoundly is not merely the instructions themselves, but the subtle reorientation they demand. One cannot approach this knowledge with casual curiosity. One must enter with a willingness to let go, to witness the dissolution of familiar truths. The ancient scribes encoded the teachings in a language both symbolic and precise, understanding that the mind cannot be forced but invited. To follow their guidance is to feel the weight of ordinary perception lift, revealing a lattice of hidden interconnections, cause and twine of effect, choice inseparable from consequence, and awareness flow like a river beneath the surface of apparent reality. Each phrase, each metaphor, functions as a key, turning not in a lock of metal but in the resonant mechanism of consciousness itself. It is worth noting that this text is not merely a philosophical curiosity or a collection of mystical aphorisms. Its counsel has practical bearings upon the way one navigates the tangible world. Those who emerge from the matrix see its mechanisms in everyday phenomena, the subtle nudges of circumstance, the invisible currents that shape human behavior, the hidden agreements that underlie social structures. Life does not cease to operate according to its own rules. Rather, the awakened perceive those rules in their fullness, grasping the unseen threads that bind events and responses. In this, there is power not over others, but over the self, a capacity to act with clarity, to make choices uncolored by inherited illusions, to inhabit existence with intentionality rather than reaction. The text also warns of the necessary tension in this journey. Awakening is not a comfort nor a linear ascension. It is a process of friction, of seeing the familiar dissolve and embracing the vast, uncharted spaces that lie beyond. In these spaces, time becomes pliable, memory shifts, and perception extends in ways that are simultaneously exhilarating and disorienting. The matrix itself, having sensed the loosening of its hold, may resist with subtle illusions, moments of doubt, déjà vu, and cognitive dissonance, as though reality itself is testing the fidelity of one's attention. Here, the text becomes a lantern, illuminating not the path with light alone, but with understanding, that resistance is companion, that confusion is a teacher, and that true liberation is measured not in the absence of challenge, but in the steadfastness of awareness. And so, As one begins this exploration, the reader is invited to consider a paradox. To leave the matrix is to enter freedom, yet freedom is inseparable from responsibility. The ancient text does not promise escape as entertainment or fantasy. It offers a disciplined unveiling of perception, a recognition of the patterns that govern thought, action, and experience. Each lesson within its pages is a strand of a larger design, a weaving of insight that prepares the mind to operate beyond the habitual, to perceive not only the illusion but the architecture beneath it, and to act in harmony with the deeper currents of reality. In the end, the text is a mirror, a compass, and a doorway. Its guidance is timeless because it touches the fundamental structure of awareness itself, reaching across cultures and centuries to awaken the latent faculties that lie dormant within all who dare to read with sincerity. To engage with it is to undertake a journey without maps in the ordinary sense, for the landscape is not geographic but existential, a vast interplay of consciousness, intention, and subtle energy. It calls not merely for understanding, but for participation in the act of liberation itself, a movement from the passive absorption of experience to the active orchestration perception, a transition that transforms the reader from inhabitant of a prescriptive world into a co-creator of lived reality. To step into the core teachings of this ancient text is to recognize that the world we inhabit is a multi-layered tapestry of appearances, a matrix of agreements that few dare to question. These layers, woven from thought, habit, culture, and memory, create a convincing sense of solidity. Yet, beneath their apparent permanence, they ripple with impermanence, revealing the subtle truth that reality is not a monolith but a fluid construct susceptible to consciousness itself. The text's first pillar insists that perception is not merely passive observation. It is active participation. To leave the matrix, one must cultivate an awareness capable of discerning between what is imposed by the collective and what arises from the deeper self, an awareness attuned to the currents that underlie visible phenomena. Central to this philosophy is the recognition of illusion as both a shield and a teacher. The matrix, in its seductive coherence, protects us from the dizzying infinity of possibilities, while simultaneously binding us to repetition. It presents comfort in predictability, yet in its rigidity, it conceals the hidden architecture of experience. The text reveals that liberation is not achieved by external rebellion, but by an internal recalibration, a turning of the gaze inward to perceive the mechanisms of thought, the scripts of conditioning, and the habitual loops of identity. Within this recognition lies the first transformative insight. The separation between self and world is largely illusory. To see the matrix is to see the self not as a fixed entity, but as a lens through which reality coheres, and this realization forms a foundation of conscious emancipation. Interwoven with this is the principle of alignment, an idea that resonates with both ancient mysticism and modern consciousness studies. Actions, intentions, and perceptions must converge, for the matrix responds not merely to thought, but to coherent expression. The text emphasizes a subtle interplay between awareness and effect. To perceive the illusion without engaging it mindlessly is the key to stepping beyond its confines. Like a musician tuning their instrument, the aspirant must refine their attention, calibrating intention with observation, until the resonance of the inner state harmonizes with the underlying rhythm of existence. It is not enough to intellectually understand the matrix. One must attune to its vibrations, sensing the hidden codes and responding with subtlety and discernment. Another guiding concept is the fluidity of identity. The matrix thrives on the assumption of permanence, a stable self, a fixed set of beliefs, a predictable sequence of events. Yet the text insists that all identities are provisional, formed by narrative and reinforced through repetition. By loosening attachment to these constructs, one finds entry points to transcendence. This does not imply dissolution into chaos, but rather the ability to navigate multiple layers of reality with clarity. The practitioner recognizes that each persona, role, and story is a tool, a temporary vessel for consciousness, and that mastery lies in wielding them with awareness rather than being wielded by them. Through this lens, even the most mundane aspects of life, work, relationships, daily routines, become vehicles for discernment, offering mirrors which the hidden architecture of the matrix reveals itself. Integral to these teachings is the understanding of causality and influence. The matrix operates through networks of subtle cause and effect, some visible, many imperceptible. Every thought, every act of attention contributes to the ongoing choreography of experience. The text emphasizes the ethical dimension of liberation. One cannot step beyond the matrix without responsibility. Conscious perception amplifies influence, and thus, the liberated observer must cultivate discernment and integrity. This interplay between freedom and responsibility is neither abstract nor moralistic. It is functional, a recognition that the act of perceiving is itself a creative force. In practical terms, the aspirant learns to navigate the currents of life without being buffeted by them, sensing the unseen interconnections that shape outcomes, and adjusting presence and action accordingly. The final core theme revolves around the principle of initiation and experiential knowledge. The text, like a carefully constructed ritual, invites participation rather than mere comprehension. Knowledge, it asserts, is insufficient without enactment. The awakening of perception must be lived moment by moment. This is not a linear path, but a spiral, a recurring refinement of awareness through observation, reflection, and subtle intervention. Each encounter, challenge, and choice becomes both lesson and laboratory, revealing the underlying structure of the matrix and the latent capacities of consciousness. The ancient teachers encoded this wisdom in stories, allegories, and symbolic gestures precisely because the mind grasps the living truth not through instruction alone, but through the intimate, unfolding experience of reality itself. Throughout these pillars runs a common thread: the transformative power of attention. Attention, when cultivated deliberately, becomes a lens of clarity, revealing the hidden rules that shape perception and existence. The text guides the aspirant to move from passive attention, where one is swept along by circumstance and habit, to active awareness, where every moment is a point of engagement with the living pattern of the matrix. In this state, the distinction between observer and observed begins to dissolve, consciousness expands, and the very boundaries of the self become permeable. One realizes that the matrix is not something external to be defeated, but a system within which awareness can navigate, influence, and ultimately transcend. Thus, the ancient text lays a foundation for an unfolding mastery. Perception as practice, awareness as instrument, and action as aligned expression. By internalizing these core principles, the seeker begins to experience the subtle freedom that exists even within apparent limitation. Reality, once rigid and confining, becomes a responsive canvas, a living system in which intentionality, observation, and discernment coalesce. This is not an escape in a conventional sense, but a radical expansion of consciousness, a move toward the realization that the matrix, though pervasive and persuasive, is not absolute. It is a construct, and constructs to be understood, navigated, and transcended. To illuminate the truths embedded within the ancient text, one must turn not only to doctrine, but to story. For the human mind is most receptive to the hidden architecture of reality when draped in metaphor. Consider, for a moment, a labyrinth carved from light and shadow, each corridor pulsating with a rhythm that seems both alien and intimate. Within its walls walk countless figures, some aware they're wandering, some lost in the illusion of permanence. Here lies the first narrative. A traveler, bound by the patterns of habit and expectation, encounters a mirror that does not merely reflect form but intention. In a reflection, every thought, every fear, every desire is amplified, revealing not just the self as it appears, but the self as it shapes the matrix itself. The mirror asks not for answers but for recognition. To see the pattern is to begin loosening its grip. Another story unfolds in the figure of a serpent, coiled around a tree whose branches reach simultaneously into ground and the heavens. Each scale of the serpent shimmers with symbols, representing lessons accumulated across lifetimes of perception. The serpent moves without haste, yet its motion unravels threads of illusion, revealing hidden pathways that connect seemingly unrelated events. Here, the aspirant learns that progress is not linear. Liberation is neither a sprint nor a conquest, but a nuanced attunement to cycles and repetitions. The matrix, like the serpent, is alive, serpentine, and responsive, its motion intertwined with one's own perception. Understanding its rhythm is not a matter of force, but of delicate observation, patience, and the cultivation of timing. A third narrative speaks of a city suspended in a sky of shifting color, each building formed from thought, memory, and collective consent. Its streets are corridors of expectation, lined with the shadows of what might have been and the echoes of what is yet to come. In this city, a young seeker walks with eyes unclouded, noticing how the structures bend subtly toward belief, how the sky itself responds to the cadence of attention. Through encounters with citizens who have long surrendered to routine, the seeker learns the first practical lesson of the text. The matrix is constructed as much from collective surrender as from individual obedience. Freedom, therefore, requires a dual awareness, seeing both the personal patterns that ensnare and the communal rhythms that sustain them. The city, though imposing, is permeable, its architecture negotiable, and its reality pliable to the clarity of consciousness. Symbols, too, carry lessons that language alone cannot convey. Imagine a key suspended in a void, its teeth glinting with the promise of passage, yet accessible only to those who have attuned to the subtleties of perception. The text repeatedly returns to this motif. Unlocking the matrix is not a matter of brute effort, but of resonance. One must cultivate an internal state that aligns with the hidden frequencies of reality, allowing the key to engage. The story insists that initiation is not an event but a state of sustained openness, an experiential recognition that every moment contains encoded guidance, and that the external and internal worlds are reflections of one another. One of the most compelling narratives features a river of stars flowing through a canyon that seems impossible, suspended between worlds. Along its banks, travelers pause to drink from waters that shimmer with insight. The river embodies a constant flux of consciousness, the unceasing movement of cause and effect, thought and action. Those who attempt to hold its waters in the cup of expectation find them slipping through fingers, yet those who observe without grasping see the patterns emerge naturally, a dance of order within apparent chaos. The ancient text emphasizes this. Liberation arises not from resisting flow, but from attuning to it. One perceived the currents of the matrix not as a constraint, but as a responsive system, where attention and discernment guide movement. Finally, the text tells of a lighthouse on a precipice, its light both revealing and concealing. The seeker is drawn to its beam experience a paradox. Clarity illuminates pathways, yet simultaneously casts shadows, showing how easily the mind can mistake partial understanding for total freedom. Here, the narrative conveys a profound truth. Glimpses of the matrix's structure can inspire and disorient equally. Only through sustained engagement, humility, and continual refinement of perception can one navigate the terrain effectively. The lighthouse is not merely a guide. It is a mirror of consciousness itself, reflecting the aspirant's readiness to perceive the subtleties that govern the interplay of awareness and reality. Through these symbolic narratives, the text demonstrates that leaving the matrix is less about dramatic gestures and more about cultivating an internal ecology attuned to the hidden rules of existence. The stories are not mere allegories. They are operational maps, encoded with layers of instruction accessible to those willing to engage with attention, patience, and discernment. Each narrative, whether the labyrinth, the serpent, the suspended city, the key, the river of stars, or the lighthouse, serves as a guidepost, offering insight into mechanics perception, the pliability of reality, and the pathways toward liberation. The teachings of the ancient text, when stripped of metaphor yet retained in essence, reveal that leaving the matrix is not an esoteric exercise confined to rarefied air of monasteries or hidden sanctuaries. It is a practical, deeply human endeavor that requires the subtle harmonization of attention, perception, and action. The first realization that emerges is deceptively simple. The matrix is maintained through distraction, habituation, and the unexamined acceptance of external narratives. Every beep of a device, every compulsive habit, every assumption that life is, as it seems, acts as a thread in the intricate web. Liberation, therefore, begins with noticing. The act of noticing, really noticing, is the initial fracturing of the illusion. One observes the rhythm of the mind, the patterns of thought, and the habitual interpretations that shape experience. Daily life becomes a laboratory for experimentation. The text suggests cultivating what might be called an attentional resonance, a deliberate alignment of consciousness with the underlying structures that govern experience. In practice, this means observing cause and effect not only externally but internally, how a thought generates emotion, how belief molds perception, how subtle decisions accumulate into profound consequences. It is here that the ancient guidance intersects with the modern. Practices such as mindful awareness, reflective journaling, and disciplined observation of one's habitual reactions are not spiritual ornamentation. They are operational tools, allowing one to see the matrix in motion. Consider communication. as a testbed for understanding the dynamics of the matrix. Words, both spoken and unspoken, carry weight, shaping perception and reinforcing patterns of attention. The text emphasizes that when one interacts without reflexive adherence to social or cultural programming, the responses elicited are often surprising. Individuals operating from automatic patterns respond predictably, yet when a different frequency is introduced, an attuned presence, a silence pregnant with discernment, the apparent rules shift. By practicing conscious interaction, one begins to see the pliability of the system, the ways in which perception and response co-create the reality that appears fixed. Movement and embodiment, too, are arenas for practical mastery. The ancient text repeatedly returns to the notion that consciousness is not confined to thought, but exists as an integrated field within the body and environment. Engaging in deliberate, mindful motion, walking, stretching, or even simple gestures performed with heightened awareness, anchors the mind in present awareness and allows one to perceive subtle cues that usually go unnoticed. The body becomes a sensor, translating the hidden vibrations of the matrix into tangible, experiential knowledge. Physical stillness, conversely, illuminates mental turbulence, revealing the knots of unexamined patterns that hold the self in alignment with habitual illusion. Another implication lies in perception of time. The text challenges conventional notions, proposing that time, as commonly experienced, is a construct of habituated attention. By observing moments without succumbing to compulsive pull of past regrets or future anxieties, the seeker cultivates a temporal elasticity. Decisions and actions taken from this expanded awareness resonate differently, revealing pathways that are usually obscured by linear expectation. Life, then, becomes not a sequence of predetermined events, but a landscape of emergent possibilities, navigable through the lens of conscious perception. Financial and material engagement is also subject to this reframing. The matrix operates, in part, through fear and scarcity, compelling the mind to fixate on accumulation and avoidance. Applying the ancient text principles involves discerning need from compulsion, understanding value not as a measure of possession, but as an alignment with intention and utility. One learns to navigate societal constructs of wealth, status, and obligation not by outright rejection, but through conscious participation, noticing where automatic adherence perpetuates limitation, and where deliberate choice expands freedom. Emotional landscapes are perhaps the most immediate proving grounds. Every feeling, fear, desire, attachment, aversion, provides feedback about the matrix's grip on attention. The text teaches that observing emotions without identification or judgment does not suppress them, but allows their patterns to become intelligible. Like current in a river, emotions reveal both the depth and direction of the flow. Responding to them with awareness rather than reaction shifts the internal ecology, gradually loosening the frameworks that enforce automatic alignment with the illusion. Even relationships take on a new character under this lens. The ancient text posits that interactions are mirrors, reflecting conditioning one carries and the unexamined narratives that shape perception. By noticing relational dynamics with clarity, one can distinguish between habitual projection and authentic exchange. This clarity transforms ordinary interactions into exercises of discernment, teaching how patterns emerge, how influence operates, and how attention can be maintained without surrendering to external pressures. In essence, the text calls for a continual calibration of consciousness, a dynamic engagement in which awareness, intention, and perception are aligned as finely tuned instruments. Every thought, action, and observation becomes a practice, a ritual of presence that reinforces the understanding that reality is not a fixed object, but a responsive system. The matrix, once opaque, gradually becomes a field of subtle vibrations, navigable through skillful attention. What appears external is often a reflection of internal patterns, and mastery arises when the two are harmonized, revealing that the escape is not outward but inward, not about fleeing but about seeing differently. And so, after traversing the corridors of perception, mapping the hidden architecture of attention, and practicing the disciplined resonance of body, mind, and emotion, the seeker arrives at quiet revelation. Leaving the matrix is neither a final act nor a destination, but a continual unfolding. The ancient text closes with a paradox, simple yet profound. The system that seemed unbreakable was never a prison, only a mirror. What binds, constrains, or terrifies is rarely external. It is the unexamined assumption, the habitual reaction, the unobserved thought. By turning inward, by cultivating the subtle awareness that observes without judgment, one finds that the walls of illusion dissolve like morning mist beneath the rising sun, revealing the infinite interplay of cause, perception, and choice. The transformation, as the text insists, is not spectacular in the conventional sense. There are no fireworks, no grand ascensions visible to the eyes of the world. Instead, it manifests in the everyday, in the fluidity of decisions, in the uncanny synchronicity of events, in the stillness beneath emotional storms, in the clarity that arises when the noise of habit and distraction recedes. One begins to see the world not as a rigid structure to be navigated, but as a responsive field, a living tapestry that mirrors the observer's clarity, intention, and presence. The very notion of escape transforms. There is no fleeing, only attunement, no battle, only discernment, no resistance, only conscious engagement. A final theme emerges from the deepest layers of the text. Impermanence is the only constant, yet it is not to be feared. Each moment, each pattern, each seemingly immutable structure is a transient play of forces, a manifestation of attention and energy that arises, evolves, and dissolves. This understanding fosters a profound freedom. When one ceases to cling to the constructs of past conditioning or the anticipated outcomes of the future, every interaction becomes a laboratory of awareness. Every encounter a portal through which reality can be perceived anew. To act with this awareness is to live as if the matrix were already transparent, its mechanisms revealed, its illusions gently unspooling beneath the light of conscious observation. And yet, knowledge alone is not enough. The text repeatedly stresses embodiment. The internal insights must be integrated, expressed through action, and mirrored in choices that resonate with clarity and purpose. Meditation, reflection, and the deliberate calibration of attention are not ends in themselves. They are scaffolding for living the principles in daily life. Whether in conversation, movement, emotional regulation, or creative expression, the awakened consciousness manifests as presence. Others may perceive it subtly, sometimes not at all, but the impact is real, rippling outward, subtly reshaping the fabric of interactions and circumstances. The liberation is not a spectacle. It is a quiet sovereignty, a mastery of one's inner landscape that transforms the apparent rigidity of the external world. Perhaps the most radical implication of this ancient wisdom is that matrix and freedom are not two separate domains. Freedom does not arrive when one exits a system. It is recognized when one sees the patterns, responds with awareness, and ceases to unconsciously reinforce the constraints. The text implies that the architecture of reality is responsive, pliable, and exquisitely sensitive to the observer's attention. In this light, leaving the matrix is less a heroic quest and more an intimate dialogue with existence itself, an ongoing practice of perception, choice, and alignment. One's life becomes simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary, the mundane infused with subtle mastery, the everyday imbued with the vastness of potential. Thus, the final call is both invitation and challenge. Engage fully with your attention. Question every automatic belief. Explore every habitual reaction. Observe without judgment. Act without compulsion. And allow the current of life to reveal its responsive nature. Align body, mind, and perception with presence so that each moment resonates with clarity. Let the interplay of subtle awareness and deliberate action illuminate pathways that were previously invisible, opening portals that lead not outward but inward, into the responsive, malleable, infinitely intricate field of consciousness that the text so carefully maps. This is not merely a teaching to be read and admired. It is an instruction to be lived. It is a practice that demands courage, patience, and the willingness to encounter both the shadows and the brilliance within oneself. For in the end, to leave the matrix is not to escape life. It is to perceive it fully, to participate consciously in it unfolding, to recognize that what seems solid was always fluid, and that the deepest freedom lies in the artful, deliberate engagement with reality itself. Walk through your day with this awareness. Notice the threads of distraction and habit that previously guided your every step. Recognize the infinite patterns of cause and effect as they dance before you. Move, speak, feel, and create with intention, knowing that every choice resonates in the subtle fabric of experience. The ancient text closes not with a promise of perfection, but with an assurance of possibility. The matrix bends to the observer who sees clearly, acts wisely, and honors the responsive nature of existence. In this recognition, liberation is no longer a distant goal. It is a continuous reality of conscious engagement. The ultimate invitation is to awaken within the ordinary, to see the extraordinary in each moment, and to realize that leaving the matrix was never about departing from life, but about inhabiting it with total presence, profound clarity, and unwavering awareness. And as you step into this field of consciousness, you discover that what was once invisible becomes palpable, what was once incomprehensible becomes intimate, and what was once constrained becomes fluid, responsive, and alive. At last, the text offers its parting insight. Reality is not a fixed cage. It is a living reflection, and your attention is the key. Through deliberate awareness, through the meticulous cultivation of presence, the matrix does not merely shift. It dissolves, revealing an endlessly responsive, vibrant field in which consciousness and reality entwine. To leave the matrix is to awaken, moment by moment, to the profound freedom that was always your birthright.